Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is from chapter 329. Chapter 329. "She has come to stay with me," said Princess Mary. "The Count and Countess will be here in a few days. The Countess is in a dreadful state, but it was necessary for Natasha herself to see a doctor. They insisted on her coming with me." "Yes, is there a family free from sorrow now?" said Pierre, addressing Natasha. "You know it happened the very day we were rescued. I saw him. What a delightful boy he was." Natasha looked at him, and by way of answer to his words, her eyes widened and lit up. "What can one say or think of as consolation?" said Pierre. "Nothing. Why had such a splendid boy, so full of life, to die?" "Yes, in these days it would be hard to live without faith," remarked Princess Mary. Yes, that is really true," Pierre hastily interrupted her. "Why is it true?" Natasha asked, looking attentively into Pierre's eyes. "How can you ask why?" said Princess Mary. "The thought alone of what awaits—" Natasha, without waiting for Princess Mary to finish again, looked inquiringly at Pierre. "And because," Pierre continued, "only one who believes that there is a God ruling us can bear a loss such as hers and yours." Natasha had already opened her mouth to speak, but suddenly stopped. Pierre hurriedly turned away from her and again addressed Princess Mary, asking about his friend's last days. Pierre's confusion had now almost vanished, but at the same time he felt that his freedom had also completely gone. He felt that there was now a judge of his every word and action whose judgment mattered more to him than that of all the rest of the world. As he spoke now, he was considering what impression his words would make on Natasha. He did not purposely say things to please her, but whatever he was saying he regarded from her standpoint. Princess Mary, reluctantly as is usual in such cases, began telling of the condition in which she had found Prince Andrew. But Pierre's face quivering with emotion, his questions and his eager, restless expression gradually compelled her to go into details which she feared to recall for her own sake. Yes, and so?" Pierre kept saying, as he leaned toward her with his whole body and eagerly listened to her story. Yes, so he grew tranquil and softened. With all his soul he had always thought one thing, to be perfectly good. So he could not be afraid of death. The faults he had, if he had any, were not of his making. So he did soften. What a happy thing that he saw you again, he added, suddenly turning to Natasha and looking at her with eyes full of tears. Natasha's face twitched. She frowned and lowered her eyes for a moment. She hesitated for an instant whether to speak or not. "Yes, that was happiness," she then said in her quiet voice with its deep chest notes. "For me it certainly was happiness." She paused. "And he said he was wishing for it at the very moment I entered the room." Natasha's voice broke. She blushed, pressed her clasped hand on her knees, and then controlling herself with an evident effort lifted her head and began to speak rapidly. "We knew nothing of it when we started from Moscow. I did not dare to ask about him. Then suddenly Sonia told me he was traveling with us. I had no idea and could not imagine what state he was in. All I wanted was to see him and be with him," she said, trembling and breathing quickly. And not letting them interrupt her, she went on to tell what she had never yet mentioned to anyone, all she had lived through during those 3 weeks of her journey in life at Yaroslav. Pierre listened to her with lips parted and eyes fixed upon her full of tears. As he listened, he did not think of Prince Andrew, nor of death, nor of what she was telling. He listened to her and felt only pity for what she was suffering now while she was still speaking. Princess Mary, frowning in her effort to hold back her tears, sat beside Natasha and heard for the first time the story of those days, those last days, of her brother's and Natasha's love. Evidently Natasha needed to tell that painful yet joyful tale. She spoke, mingling most trifling details with the intimate secrets of her soul, and it seemed as if she could never finish. Several times she repeated the same thing twice. Dessal's voice was heard outside the door, asking whether little Nicholas might come in to say good night. "Well, that's all, everything," said Natasha. She got up quickly just as Nicholas entered, almost ran to the door, which was hidden by curtains, struck her head against it, and rushed from the room with a moan either of pain or sorrow. Pierre gazed at the door through which she had disappeared and did not understand why he suddenly felt all alone in the world. Princess Mary roused him from his abstraction by drawing his attention to her nephew who had entered the room. At that moment of emotional tenderness, young Nicholas's face, which resembled his father's, affected Pierre so much that when he had kissed the boy, he got up quickly, took out his handkerchief, and went to the window. He wished to take leave of Princess Mary, but she would not let him go. "No, Natasha and I sometimes don't go to sleep until after 2, so please don't go. I will order supper. Go downstairs. We will come immediately." Before Pierre left the room, Princess Mary told him, "This is the first time she has talked about him like that." All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 329. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, day 329. Delivery from the Snare. That we are born into a world of suffering is indisputable. Lamentations of sorrow issue forth from the rippling waters of the Elizabethan River Thames, alongside which Shakespeare wrote of an existence weary with disasters and tugged with fortune, and then all the way back to the banks of the Veda Ganges, from which flows the insight that the bottomman is overcome by confusedness, bewilderment, and distraction as a bird caught in a snare. So we stand, like Sophocles' Oedipus, born to misery. We're at a point in our novel where all of our characters are acutely aware of this reality. Pierre has only recently survived a horrible captivity. The Rostovs have lost Petya. Mary and Natasha have lost Prince Andrew. Moscow is in ruins. How to bear it all? Pierre is already on the path to enlightenment. He's learned from Platon Karatsiev to detach himself from the world and render all to God. Pierre even hints at this in today's chapter when he agrees with Mary that in hard times it is difficult to live without faith. This is sensible advice for the theist and atheist alike. So much of our suffering is born of our attachment to people, places, and to things. What catches the Butatman bird in snare, remember, is the thinking that this is I and that is mine. Daily meditation. What then should a man have in readiness in such circumstances? What else than this? What is mine and what is not mine, and what is permitted to me and what is not permitted to me? I must die. Must I die then lamenting? I must be put in chains. Must I then also lament? I must go into exile. Does any man then hinder me from going with smiles and cheerfulness and contentment? Tell me the secret you possess. I will not, for this is in my power. But I will put you in chains. You may fetter my leg, but my will not even Zeus himself can overpower. I will throw you into prison. My poor body, you mean. I will cut your head off. What then have I told you that my head alone cannot be cut off? These are the things which philosophers should meditate upon, which they should write daily, in which they should exercise themselves. Epictetus, the Discourses. All right, that concludes my reading of and reflection on chapter 329 of War and Peace. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for listening. Remember that tomorrow we're going to be reading and reflecting on chapter 330. I hope you join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.